Good afternoon, guys. So yes, to start with, most of you know me, so you do know I suffer from a mildly, although medically undiagnosed form of Tourette's. So if the occasional swear word does pop out, apologies in advance for offence. But I'm going to try and behave because there's apparently a pool going that I heard on Saturday night at the party. That there's this bet going that Lizande cannot get through the speech without swearing like a bleep 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 bleep. But if I don't, then I want the money. So, okay. Let's get cracking. Garbage in, garbage out. I'm not talking about our government or Eskom. I'm actually going to talk about real banking principles today. I was a big Game of Thrones fan. For those of you that never watched Game of Thrones, that missed the entire series, we need to have a talk afterwards. There's a gap. Bad data. This talk is all about bad data. Data quality and accurate data management should be the top priority at every company. We know this. It's common sense, it's ingrained business principles. Because what happens if you've got poor or incomplete data? Loss of revenue, even from your small mom and pop fish and chip shop on the corner. If they don't know their customers, if they don't understand their own financial records, if they don't understand the ups and downs of when people buy haddock and wanneer soek hulle net snoek cookies or whatever the case may be, it's going to eventually impact your bottom line. Wasted resources, that goes without saying. If you've got people employed to manage your data and they end up chasing their tails or sitting with inaccurate reporting systems or ineffective operations, you are wasting good resources, you're wasting money, you're wasting time. The big thing, obviously, bad data leads to inaccurate decision making. In the economy and the world that we are in today, where it's a dog-eat-dog world, you really cannot afford to make bad decisions. The market might let you get away with it once, maybe even twice if you're lucky. But you're going to get screwed the third time you make that decision. And no, screwed's not a vloekwoord, no? So the pot is still open. So poor data equals poor decision making. The whole garbage in, garbage out principle. I don't know whether that was supposed to be an IT dude sitting there on his chair and then he disappeared into the ether, or I don't know, he's a dupe mart or his hyper framework exploded. Some technical stuff happened over there. Now, all companies that's worth their salt should know this, correct? They should know that data management and data quality is important, correct? But then you guys know what they say about common sense, nah? It's like deodorant. The people that need it the most use it the least. So it's a problem. There was another common sense one that I could say, but that would involve the swear words, so I'm not going to go there. I'm trying. Guys, I'm trying. You must really, just for that fact, you must be really proud of me. Okay. Over 25% of new companies fail due to the way that they manage their data. Their data being bad, incomplete, inaccurate, out of cycle, out of time, whatever the case may be. And bad data, this is now where my age is going to show. I know some of you haven't been born in 2008 yet, so bad data was at the core of the 2008 financial crisis that hit the world. Let me explain. See, Ned Stark, pretty. He died in the first episode. It was very unfortunate. I almost stopped watching right there, but then I saw there were dragons and it was all lacquer. So how did the 2008 financial crisis start? At that time, I have to roll it a bit back. 2003, 2004, the US government, and specifically at that time, I think it was George Bush Sr., said he wanted his lower income part of his population, the Jerry Springer contestants that live in the trailer parks. He wanted them to own their own properties. Because what happens to the economy if you own your own property, you have your own asset? You are invested in making better financial decisions, looking after your family, building that sense of community. So property ownership lies at almost, I don't want to say the heart of capitalism because that sounds really vulgar, but property ownership imbues the user or the person with a different mind frame as to how they manage their lives, the role they play in the community, all of these pretty fluffy goetertjies. So at that stage, 2003, 2004, the Bush administration went to the big banks and said, guys, we need to enable our lower income part of our community to be able to buy their own houses. Because all of these good things are going to flow, and it's going to be stars and stripes, and Michael Jackson won't do anything wrong, and all of that wonderful stuff. So what the banks then came up with, that's a bank. Traditionally, your mortgage bond or your home loan is usually linked to the prime rate of your country. So if you're a good credit risk, like you pay your bills on time and you're all shanana, the bank will offer you a rate that's below prime. If you're a really, and this is my first swear word, but it's not a swear word because cock is not really a swear word. If you're a cock credit risk, the bank is going to say prime plus. We all know this, we've seen this. The younger guys now starting out, the first car, the first financing, your rates aren't going to be as good as mine at the ripe old age of 48, where I'm starting to get bigger rates. Because I think the bank is sorry for me, but in any case. So traditionally, your mortgage bonds or your home loans are pegged as up or down prime 1% or 2%. But in order to now facilitate this Jerry Springer buying their own houses scenario, the banks came up with what they call a subprime mortgage bond. So they took the prime rate and they cut it way down, and they said for the first 2 years of your 20-year home loan journey, you are going to pay almost no interest whatsoever to enable you to buy this house. And they flocked in their millions, and they went and they bought these houses, they took out these loans. That small bank in turn decided, I want to offload this risk into the market, and they went to the big investment banks, and they came up with something called a collateral debt obligation or a mortgage bond security, a derivative product derived off this asset base. That then in turn was sold into the broader market, insurance companies, investors. Everybody spread the risk, the cash was flowing, it was magnificent, but the problem, these type of instruments at that stage was unregulated. There was no duty on any of the bankers, investors, insurance company in this value chain to report to either their board, their management, their regulator, as to how much money they had sitting in the sector of the market. And now we've all heard about the thing called concentration risk. You should spread your risk across different times. Don't put all your eggs in one basket principle. Here were huge eggs sitting in one basket. Okay, so all is lekker, no? Donald wasn't there at that stage. I think he was on his 3rd bankruptcy or his 10th wife. I don't know, somewhere around there. But now the cock hits the fan. Interest rate starts to climb. They went from a 1% interest rate in 2003 to a 5% interest rate in 2008. Now we say, geez, what were these guys complaining of? I mean, 5% interest rate, we'll laugh all the way to the bank. For them, this thing went up 5-fold. There's an English word for it. It's not quadrupled, it's divert. So now if you're Joe Soap with your very low-cost mortgage bond, and coincidentally at the same time there's now this 2-year kicker now kicked in, where your interest rate's now reset. So where you were paying maybe 0.5%, now overnight you're paying 5, 6, 7%. These guys couldn't afford it. So what happened? This house of cards started tumbling down at a hell of a rate. The Oaks started defaulting on their loans. That cash in turn devalued all the derivatives, and everybody underneath started feeling the pinch of these instruments collapsing. The result was the first big bank to hit the skids. In 2008, Lehman Brothers had to file for bankruptcy that Friday afternoon. It was blood on the walls, people. Bankers were in panic. It was horrid. At that stage, Lehman was the 4th largest bank in the world. They had $639 billion in assets, but they had $619 billion in debt. So you'll think, well, simple maths, they still had $20 billion in the bank. That's almost as much as the Gupta stole. Why were these guys in a panic? That 20 billion kitty was not sufficient for them to service their income streams and to keep their investments happy. So they had to go, sorry, bankruptcy, end of story. They were the largest victim to date of what then became known as the US subprime mortgage crisis. Other banks followed suit. Citibank was fortunate that the regulator bailed them out and shored up their balance sheet. Bear Stearns, Royal Bank of Scotland, Merrill Lynch, the list goes on and on and on. And it wasn't contained to the US alone. This thing started trickling out. Because a lot of those investors that were buying those derivative instruments were actually sitting overseas, in London, in Singapore, in wherever, and trading this. I mean, we all know how these markets trade. There's no borders, there's no geographical boundaries. So this thing started rippling out. They estimate that in that October alone, there was a loss of $10 trillion in market capitalization. Now, I don't know how much 10 trillion is in rands, but it's definitely more than the Gupta stole, okay? So that's definitely big. Businesses failed left, right, and center, because Joe Soap now not only cannot afford his mortgage bond, he's now suddenly being hit with all of these inflationary pressures coming from all sides. Declines in consumer wealth, they still don't know how much that was to date. They're still trying to, 11 years after the fact, trying to finally come up with a total tally. And this then became known as the Great Recession of 2008 to 2012. So that dude that did the Lego talk, he thinks he's the only one talking about a recession. I'm on top of this. Even in South Africa, we were not spared. Look at this. We were doing pretty okay, and then in 2008, look what happened there. Because even though our bankers weren't as involved in trading these derivatives, what happens the moment that there's a run on the banks worldwide is all the investors pull their money out of the emerging markets. Now, and South Africa, emerging markets, unsafe, pull our money out. We went into recession for the first time in 19 years, and they estimate that there was about 1 million jobs that were lost, largely in the mining industry, because all of the guys pulled out of the gold markets and the markets in South Africa. Now, how do we fix this? Or what did we do to fix this? This is Basel. It's a little city in Switzerland, very pretty. It's by the lake. They've got very nice cheese and chocolate. In Basel, in Switzerland, there's a group of people called the Basel Committee for Banking Supervision, BCBS. It's a group of men and women, all highly knowledgeable in financial markets and in the banking fraternity, that sit together. It's almost like a think tank / super banking regulator. They sit together and they look at market trends, businesses, what's happening in the financial world, and then they come up with position papers or guidance to say to the banks worldwide, this is how you should manage your bank. This is what we suggest you do year, and year. So they looked at this thing. They realized that this whole thing started with the fact that the boards and the regulators all over the world didn't realize how big this Joe Soap, Jerry Springer pot of trouble was. Let's step in, and then they published what was known as the BCBS 239 position paper. So Basel Committee Banking Supervision, position paper number 239, that talks about how a bank should manage and aggregate their risk data. This paper was published in 2016, and the final deadline for implementation is December next year. So it's been a 5-year journey that all the banks in the world are on. And it's been quite an interesting challenge. So what does this position paper compose of? Guys, if you want to fall asleep, if you're suffering from insomnia, there's 2 things you can do. You could read the Tax Act. Gus, you'll agree with me. The South African Tax Act is the god-awful, most boring piece of work ever. Or you can read the BCBS 239 position paper, which is a close second. So, but we've had consultants that distilled this down into 11 data management and 3 supervisory principles. The first one deals with governance and infrastructure. Governance and infrastructure, what they say around that, is that each bank should have a fully documented and functioning reporting framework. From Sunny that works at the teller desk in Kakamas, all the way to your CEO of the board. They should understand how their risks roll up, how it's reported, and what their role is in this chain of reporting and data. Then obviously that's only as good as your IT infrastructure that underpins it. So your bank and the people that take the decisions in your bank should be able to depend on your IT systems, both in what they call business as usual, normal day-to-day banking, as well as stress scenarios. So let's say stress scenario is the following. Eskom explodes this afternoon at 3 o'clock. 4 o'clock, the SARB is on the phone to each of us going, Bank X, what is your exposure to Eskom and all public sector entities? I need the figures now. You can't say to the Reserve Bank, well, sorry dudes, this thing kind of happened outside of my normal reporting cycles. You're going to have to wait until the end of September when my month-end process is run, and only then I can really tell you. You need to be able to pull this data out of your systems with relative ease and relative accuracy. Then around your data itself, obviously it goes without saying, again, common sense deodorant principles, that you need to be able to generate accurate and reliable data. The kicker there, or the interesting one, largely automated. Nowhere does the Basel position paper say that every single process in your bank needs to be fully automated. But think about this. If you're Bank X and you've got a home loan book of 10 million individual little home loans, and you only have little data capture clerks that sit with Excel spreadsheets and work out what your risk is, by the time they've collated that data, it's 10 years later and the home loans have matured. So your systems, the more automated they are, the quicker you can provide the results. Also, the more accurate those results will be. When you look at completeness, you need to be able to report on all your risk data in whatever dimension, slice and dice. So do we want to see our home loan book by South African province, by type of customer, by this, by that? So your data needs to allow you the ability to slice and dice this in a way that will make your decision makers comfortable about the risks they're assuming. Timeliness doesn't help if your report comes out 6 months after your risk event has happened. The higher the risk that you're trading on or that you're working on, like market risk, the risk of the rand seeing it's behind within foreseeable future, the higher your risk, the quicker your reporting cycle. Okay? And again, even in stress scenarios, your Eskom's exploding, your Steinhoff's going belly up. Adaptability. You need to be able to produce these ad hoc requests as and when your regulator or your management calls for it. Because yes, each bank has got its standard set of reports that they give to either the regulator or to their management on a monthly basis. But you should be able to deal with these funny little quirks and requests when they come along. Around supervisory review tools and cooperation, the Basel position paper provides for both reviews by the South African regulator, the SARB, as well as what they call self-assessment. So since 2016, when this thing came out, what the SARB did on a yearly basis is they went to the big South African banks and they went, dudes, rate yourself on your journey to Basel perfection. Where one is, oh, Bogar, ons het nog glad nie begin nie, ons weet nie waar is ons nie. To 4 being, we're living the Basel dream, we are fully managing our data in a conscious and a risk-averse manner. Somewhere on that spectrum, each bank needs to know where they are. Next thing, remedial actions and supervisory measures. The Basel position paper, which will eventually translate into legal or law in South Africa, it will be enacted in our Banks Act. It provides for your regulator to sanction you as a bank if you're not complying. This can range from just a slight slap on the wrist going, really, little blue bank, bad, don't do that again. 2, them imposing fines on you, so they can, and that has happened last year. They had a big case in London where one of the big UK banks did something around FICA or FACE or whatever that they shouldn't have done, and they got hit with a hell of a fine. Obviously, most of the banks are able to afford the fine, but what you as a bank cannot afford is the reputational damage to your bank if it becomes known in the market that the regulator is so upset with you that they fined you. Worst case scenario would be that your regulator says to you, you need to hold more capital than that what you've previously held. Let me quickly break that one down for you. Each bank's balance sheet, you've got different types of products and you've got different types of clients. The way that the South African Bank Act works is you take your entire balance sheet and you classify all your balance sheet items according to the type of client. They call that asset class. So for instance, if you as a bank have money that you've loaned to a sovereign, the South African Reserve Bank, for instance, you've bought government bonds, in terms of the Act, that is zero rated. So they say that's zero credit risk, no problem. If you have loans to public sector entities, your Telkoms, your Eskoms, your Guptas, your Wara Wara Wara, that according to the SARB is only rated at a 10% credit risk. That one I think they really need to review because I'm not sure with that one. If you owe money or you've lent money to another bank, it's 20%, blah, 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 blah. Joe Soap, you, me, Jerry Springer contestants, we're all rated at 100%. This is the simplified approach. There are more confused approaches. I'm not going to belabor the point. So what you take your balance sheet, you classify it in terms of your type of clients, you apply that risk weighting to what that dude owns you at month end. The sum of that risk weighted totals, you then say, okay, this is X, and on X I have to hold 8% of capital. Now why would a bank complain if they have to hold more capital? Surely the more capital you hold, the more stable you are. The kicker is the following. The Reserve Bank also only allows you to hold that capital in certain types of products. So you can't go into your high risk, high return products with your entire capital. It's usually low risk, low return. That's where your capital needs to sit. And because a shareholder of a bank's obligation is to maximize the profit of that bank, the more of your money that's tied up in low income or low income earning instruments, the less profitable your money is going to be working or is going to be. The last one there being home-based cooperation. It just provides that all the banks worldwide, even though they might want to stab one another in the street when they see one another in the streets of Sandton, they are part of this global think tank where they are unpacking this beast called BCBS 239. Risk reporting practices very much aligned to the risk data aggregation capabilities. So they say your reports need to be accurate, which means they need to be validated and reconciled. Because it doesn't help if you can produce it speedily, but the content in there is absolute crap. Garbage in, garbage out. Reconciled in this sense means reconciled to your official books and records, i.e. your books are balancing. The other one I think I might not be able to get. Oh, there we go. It should cover all of your material risk types, i.e. all the risks that you as a bank are facing. Fortunately for the banks in South Africa and worldwide, there's quite a decent set of risks that's been predefined by the different regulators. So you don't have to go and think, what is my risk that I wear pink panties with purple shirts and it's not going to match? They tell you, you've got credit risk, you've got operational risk, you've got market risk, you've got liquidity risk, etc., etc., etc. So given that your risk environment consists of all of these, are you covering all of them? Is your reporting framework adequate? Clarity and usefulness. Make sure the information you as a bank are reporting is actually useful to your audience. It doesn't help if you've got this whole room full of quants with like rocket science degrees that you're paying millions of rands a year, and they come up with a report that is totally nonsensical because it doesn't relate to the risks you are facing. Frequency, I've talked to that previously. I'll just want to quickly run through that. Your frequency of reporting should mirror the needs and the reporting needs of your audience. Market risk data or market risk reporting, where it's a daily rand dollar exchange rate, interest rates going up and down, they've got a daily reporting cycle. Credit risk, which traditionally changes slower over time, has got a monthly reporting cycle. And then finally, distribution. Make sure the right people are getting the right information. Again, guys, all of this should be deodorant, common sense, nah? But then it's taking all of us 5 years to go on that journey. So where did the bank start with this beast of BCBS 239? Don't worry about this. I'm not going to explain this one in detail. This is an incredibly simplified picture of what BCBS 239 is about. I was up late one night. I couldn't sleep. Harry was snoring. The cat was screaming. And I was like, let me draw a picture. So this is Lizande's mind map of BCBS 239. So where the bank started is they said for each risk type that we have, there's all these components that hang around it. I'm just going to highlight one or two of them. Let's say your risk metric is credit risk, the risk that Joe Soap is defaulting on his home loan. What the requirements say is that for each process in your bank, you need end-to-end detailed flows, Visio, whether it's Visio, Word, a piece of paper, it doesn't really matter, but obviously the more automated the better. That clearly shows how your data goes from your front door right through your processes to the end. Make sure you understand where your data is coming from, what system is housing it, what's the controls around it, who's using it, where's it going. Document that, but most importantly, keep that documentation up to date. Because that is where most banks, not just in South Africa but worldwide, are having the problem. They've spent the last 3-4 years spending all this money on BCBS and consultants and thinking and whatever. Get the Visio process of the home loan thing signed off, and then 5 days later it's out of date because IT went and made a system change and nobody told nobody. Okay? It's the reality of what we're working on. Business glossary, that's an interesting one. You would think that if you go to Bank X and you say to them, what is your definition of month-end account balance for home loan? They'd all give you the same answer. You can ask that question within a bank to 10 different departments, you get 50 different answers. Because each person looks through the lens of his system, his experiences, whatever. So how can you aggregate and manage and make decent decisions on data if the people aren't even talking the same language? And that is one of the big challenges that the banks have been facing, is just to get Kwesi and Sarki to agree that a spade is a spade. A month-end data is a month-end data. That has been one of the difficult things to get across the line. Data dictionary, that's for the techies in the room, my faithful ABSAC dev guys, I appreciate your attention. Where for each piece of data that sits in your end-to-end stream, you need the technical metadata. Type, source, table name, field, blah, blah, is it a bar chart, is it a this, that, and the other. Okay? So pretty boring documentation up to now. Importantly, your control environment. In this journey of your data where me, Joe Soap, have my home loan and I now start going through the bank systems until I end up in the SARB report. What controls are there along this journey? What adjustments are being passed on my data? What reconciliations are being done to make sure that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing? I mean, around controls, we've got our normal technical controls that the devs know quite well. System A ships 100 records worth $1 billion. Does System B receive the same 100 records worth $1 billion? Your business rules around there, you know, this cannot be greater than that if Kwesi is a this, that, and the other. The position paper provides that you have to record all of this in some sort of a register where the people have their eyes on it, where they know, for instance, around adjustments. It's all well and good that your accounting people pass adjustments at the end of the month, but as Gus would very well know, when they pass adjustments, they need to be able to justify what is that adjustment for. Why are we doing it? Are we not just cooking the books? Not that banks would ever do that. I mean, VBS was just a totally outlier case. Then the position paper provides for some nice new acronyms. This one, UDA, I particularly like. End User Desktop Application. You guys do realize that the #1 most effective, best-selling, all-time superhero banking risk management system in the world was Bill Gates' Excel spreadsheets. Now, so if your bank risk processes, if somewhere in your process you have got a model running on an Excel spreadsheet, they term that a UDA. It's not within a very controlled IT environment that's automated. The position paper doesn't say you can't have this. They say try and keep it to the minimum, and where you have it, make sure that you have got serious controls around that thing. Because obviously, Excel spreadsheets open to manipulation, open to human error, so that is a high risk area. And the expectation is that over time, you as a bank should manage down the amount of UDAs in your process to an absolute minimum, if any. Reports, yeah, absolute shithouse. That's my only official swear word for the speech. Shithouse of reports. You need to report to your board, you need to report to the SARB, you need to report on how accurate is your data, how complete is your data, where's it going, who's taking it, what's happening to it. So all of this they provide for various mechanisms. And that's where I think a lot of the banks have made the mistake, and my bank, I'm not going to name it, but my bank have gone with a pragmatic approach. They've gone, guys, it doesn't help if we just throw a gazillion million rands at this and build this over-engineered reporting solution that nobody's going to understand and that we need an army of consultants to keep going. Let's build reports that are meaningful and that are useful. And that I think is quite a good approach to have. Don't just do something for the sake of doing it. Make sure that when you build that report, it actually has value. Common sense, once again. Ad hoc stress reporting, I've spoke to that before, I'm not going to belabor the point. The nice thing here also to note is this whole thing about month-on-month or trends and improvement tracking. Your reports or your quality dashboard should show you over time that the quality of your data is improving. Because remember, this whole radar thing is a journey. We start off with really cocked data, and through applying our minds and being common sense and all of this, we're going to get to the point where our data quality keeps getting better and better and better. And we need to track that in some way. So month-on-month movement, our adjustments are going down, our amount of errors are going down. That would show the bank that they're actually getting bang for their buck. That this thing is actually working, that people are actually living this philosophy about data and taking pride in the work that you do. SLAs, OLAs, just briefly, I mean the tech guys will know this as well. Between each systems you have to have service level agreements or operational level agreements, whatever you want to call it. System X is shipping to System Y, I expect it in that format at that time, and if it doesn't happen, whose backside do I go and kick? Okay, what does all of this mean for you guys working in the financial industry? So let's first start from a quite wide perspective. We as BB&D, whether it is a developer, an analyst, a lowly PM, you've got the obligation to help your client in this radar journey. To say to them, guys, let's build systems that's actually going to add this value to your business and not just, let's see how much money we can make out of this thing. And luckily, I mean, we as a company, our philosophy has never been to schneid the client. So walk that journey with your client. Say to your client, guys, this will give you more effective risk control. This will make you manage your data better. Apply that common sense that we're all famous for, so that you actually help your client in this journey to reaching this state of nirvana where everybody's data will be pretty and there'll be no global warming and the turtles will come back and all of that happy nonsense. On a more day-to-day practical basis, BAs, you're going to be, if the banks do what they say they're going to do, if they fully embed this and live this on an ongoing basis, you're going to be in the fortunate position that if you start a new project at Bank X and you are supposed to go and look at the as-is process in order to do a to-be process, you're going to go to Sarki, who is the officially appointed data owner of that process, and she cannot deny it because she signed for it in black and white, and go, Sarki, give me your up-to-date business process flows. And you will have documentation that's up-to-date, complete, accurate, that you won't need to be chasing your tail speaking to 20 different people in order to try and find out what the as-is process is. Because we as BAs know in the conversations with clients, it always goes like this. Yeah, you need to go speak to Sarki because she owns that process, you need to go document it. Then you get to Sarki and Sarki goes, no, I was on pregnancy leave for like 6 months and then they changed it, I don't know, you need to speak to Kwesi. Then you get to Kwesi, Kwesi's like, I'm busy, I can't help you now. And you get chased from pillar to post and you waste time and you get irritated and whatever. Now you'll be able to have a go-to person that owns that lives that process. From a dev perspective, similar. You guys have accurate, up-to-date technical data around what system, what table, what field length, what rules, etc., etc., etc. These guys, we can probably then only work half day and go shopping or play golf. I don't know how we're going to bill for our hours if we don't have to go and find all this information. For me as a PM perspective, I'm definitely going to take half day off and do my nails because I'm going to be in the fortunate position that everybody will know what they're doing and everybody will be shanana. Let's take it down to a more selfish level. In theory, and this is the ideal that the BCBS paper is trying to get you, if your bank understands its data better, it can manage its risk better, it can manage your money better, which should in turn mean that your bank charges, your wealth, should be more secure than it is in an environment where banks don't really know what they're doing because their systems are funny or this or that or the other. I must say, guys, the South African banking framework and our banking environment is one of the best in the world. So as safe as your money can be in a bank, I think in South Africa it's pretty lekker. But at the end of the day, from a purely selfish perspective, if your bank understands its data better, can manage its processes better, their profit and their bottom line should get better, which means in turn it should benefit you. It should also benefit our economy, because the stronger your banking framework in your country, the more stable that country is. And the goodwill then spreads and spreads, and it's shanana and it's nirvana and all of that stuff. So that's my entire story, guys. So a very, very boring BCBS data project I have found to be tremendously challenging, quite enjoyable. I'm fortunate that I've got business stakeholders that are very lucky and they've got a sense of humor, and they don't always mind that I swear like a trooper in meetings as long as I keep it more or less sensible. But BB&D, this is the future. This is how banks need to manage their data. And each of us has got a role to play to make sure that this has not just been a wasted 5-year compliance tick box exercise. Because the same principles that applies to banking and bank data management apply just as well to us as a company, to you in your personal capacity, to any type of business that you might want to run in the foreseeable future. Fluit, fluit, my story is uit.